Hey there, welcome to Author Success Show. The special guest we have on today's episode is Tamra Andress. Tamra is a 6 times #1 bestselling author and counting, a keynote speaker, and a top podcaster. She is a serial entrepreneur who works with high capacity Christian leaders to become millionaire messengers and share the good news. She is wildly in love with words and the word. Through her publishing company, F.I.T Press, she catalyzes messengers in the marketplace by building business tree through publishing, podcasting, and platform development, while keeping play at the core. Her nonprofit, the Founder Collective, focuses on ordaining and sustaining marketplace ministers. Hey, Tamra, welcome to Author Success Show.
Thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's such a pleasure. I especially love it when I'm talking to some of our past clients because I know their journey at a much closer level than a new author who I've just heard of, right? So thank you so much for taking the time for this episode. So Tamra, for most authors that I interview, it's probably their first book that they've written and they have just published it and I'm interviewing them. But we met a couple of years ago and at that time you were writing your first book, but now you're an author of multiple books. So how did it all begin? Did you always know that you're going to write a book at some point of time in life?
Yeah, let me first honor you and the support that you gave me in that season because I had no idea what I was doing, you guys. And I didn't know that I was going to be an author. It wasn't something when I was little. I was definitely more of a speaker. I had a microphone in my hand since I was 5. I didn't really start writing, and really that was just like poetry when I was in high school. So I had never really fully written other than papers. And I'm sure there's going to be people listening to this like, I've never actually written a book. Guess what? Nobody else has before they actually do it. So you're in the same boat as all of us where we're like, what do we do? And you guys and your team was so helpful. I felt so safe when I came upon you because I had actually dished out so many thousands of dollars to multitudes of different companies that were trying to I was trying to piecemeal the project together to make it work. And when I came to you, it was like, oh my gosh, you do all of this? Oh my gosh, thank you, Lord. So I was so grateful that it was like this all-in-one service and done at such a high caliber. So I hope that that encourages people if you are considering like, where do I go? Use Happy Self Publishing. They're amazing. Yes, this is an ad infomercial and she didn't pay me to say this, okay? So I think that's where I want to start is to just know that wherever you are in the process, you might have never thought you'd be an author, but when you are summoned into writing a book, and that could be, for me, it was my faith, it was my God who was like, you're doing this thing. I'm like, I am. And he literally gave me a download. Within a week, I had 175 pages written from titles to chapters to everything. And I'm writing a book. Now, mind you, it was a 3-year cycle after that because that same book needed tweaking. It needed additions. And writing for me at the time, I had 2 little kids, was very difficult to do in the midst of my schedule, in the midst of the season of life that I was in. And I was still healing from the journey that I was writing about. And so lots of layers to that because we could go a lot of directions, but recognizing that the book that you're writing, it's going to follow you. It's going to follow you into so many multitudes of seasons. And that could scare some people like, wait, I just want to write it for this season because I'm going to be somebody different in 10 years. Yeah, me too. Like she said, I've written 6 different books since then. I've been a part of 9 different projects, and it's going to continue because we've now since launched a publishing house. And so when I process through the evolution of the written word, I know that it is going to continue to follow me, but I get to shift and evolve, and I get to create new words every single day, just like we are on this show.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing this, Tamra, because a lot of authors, they feel that, oh my God, I'm not making any progress in the first month, which means I'm not good at writing. This is not meant to be. But especially when you're writing a book, which is so close to your heart and where you're sharing your personal stories, it doesn't have to be completed in 2 or 3 months. If it's a business book, it's a how-to kind of book, it's a different thing altogether because it's all in your mind. You just have to put it on paper or you can just take somebody's help to get it written. But when you are sharing the deepest things from your life, it needs to take the time that it needs to take. And there is no shortcut there. So you mentioned that there was a time when there was a lot of flow and you just wrote a lot of things in a week's time. And then you took a long time to finish, right? So what is one or two things that you want to tell to first time writers? Any tips that helped you later to
Yes.
finish the manuscript?
Yeah, 100%. For me, I'm not like somebody who's like, okay, every day I'm going to write 1,000 words or every day I'm going to write for an hour. I have to be just like I go to sleep every night. I have to have like my earplugs, my sound machine, the light has to be a certain level. I have to have my cozy pillow. I need the same thing when I'm writing a book. I need my pot of coffee. I need silence. I need a pretty view. I need not to have to know that at 1:30 I'm going to have a call. At 2:30 my kids are going to come home. At 5:30, I need dinner to be made. At 7 o'clock is bed. How in the world do people do that? Your mind is in 1,000 places. So whether I'm writing a business book or I'm writing a personal story, I have to have a space and time that is going to give me that opportunity to breathe life into those words fully with all of my attention and all of my heart and all of my capacity, not divided at capacity. So how do I do that? I take writing retreats. I plan in my calendar ahead of time and I will take at minimum 2 days. I love to have longer. Generally 3 is like kind of my sweet spot. But I can get multiple chapters written. I can get 30,000 words out in one time frame, one retreat, if I have prepared the outline prior to. So I can do outlines in that hour bracket all the time. I can jog ideas and I can say, I want to make sure I add that story. I have this specific basic like storyboard template that I use that I curated out of an Excel spreadsheet, and it tracks all of the things that are going to be in this book, all subtopics, all sub stories. If I'm going to use scriptural context, that every reference point, if it's like a book I'm going to use or a teacher that I want to allude to, I keep it all organized in this place throughout the time frame between the writing retreats. So when I go to sit down at the computer at that writing retreat, I'm not going, what am I going to write about today? No, I know what I'm going to write about. It's already prepared. And I say, okay, ready, set, go. And I just go. So I would say writing retreats is the biggest thing that has helped me complete any of my tasks, any of my books. And I also invite people in to come on writing retreats with me now because of how critical they were for me. And I want to teach people that flow. If you've never done it before, it feels really bizarre. I want to teach people that storyboarding process. I want to give people those resources. So I don't do them often because it's a very like intimate and a trying experience as the leader of that to get inside of a bunch of people's stories in one weekend. Sometimes is emotional and can be a lot. But I encourage you to take that time, set it out in advance, and make sure that you have something that you're utilizing as a reference point to catapult you into that writing journey rather than you're starting the journey right when you sit down in blank space because you're probably just going to doodle and not have anything to say.
So true. And this is such a fantastic productivity tip. And I've seen not just writers use this, Tamra, but even entrepreneurs, anybody who wants to do deep work, they just shut themselves out and they focus over a few days where there is no distraction. And it's such a powerful tool. So thank you for sharing that, because I was wondering that, so since I'm in India, I don't get to physically buy all the books that we publish, but there are some amazing books which I love to buy, and this is one of them. So while going through it, I saw so many bits and pieces of I would say Bible verses that you've taken from so many for each chapter. I was wondering, like, how did you do this? But you were not doing this while writing, right? You went prepared with all of this, which helped you to write.
Yeah. And I think, all of us are learning every single day. We're all an expert in something. I am definitely not a theologian expert in the Bible. If you were like, hey, Tamra, give me a verse about this, I'd be like, let me get back to you. I'm not 100% sure, but I do read it front to back. And I've read it a couple of times and I'm in that process consistently. And so it's something that flows out of me. So if you are an avid reader, an avid podcast listener, if you're doing it business and you're in your context, you have spent that 10,000 hours that it takes to become an expert. You have invested that time already. And so it allows me to kind of flow a little bit easier. So like the biblical references, I don't necessarily use until I'm in the flow of writing. That's something that I add in afterwards.
Later.
But the books and the references of people teachers, those I do know I want to pull in ahead of time. But I use like the flow of being in writer's flow and the spirit led, hey, you need to reference this here. And that's how I do it in the context of my faith.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So going with the outline ready is an important thing, but what goes even before the outline is the book's topic. And you have had some great life experiences. You could have written a book on so many other things as well. How did you decide that always becoming is going to be your book and these are the subtopics that I'm going to be covering?
Yeah, had gone through this like 3-year transformational journey to that point, which I think is something people, they don't think that they're ready to write a book about something that they just walked through, right? But I told you it's like this healing process. So it was 3 years of actually going through the process, having no idea I was going to write a book. And then it was a 3-year writing process. So really it was like a 6-year evolution of myself. And we know that every 7 years, even chemically, we change. And so we're constantly evolving. And I love the freedom of what that means to us as writers. Because when I go back and read that book, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't sound like that. I can't believe I said that. That scripture is totally pulled out of context just to fit my need in that moment. Like you grow, you become. I can't imagine somebody like anyone. I could think of I'm like, who do I want to see? C.S. Lewis, anyone who you love as an author, how they started is not how they finished, right? John Maxwell's first books are not what John Maxwell's books are now. And so grace is a huge part of that, is just like, it's okay, release. But there was this moment I was having a conversation with, at the time, my personal trainer, and she was doing like all the measurements and stuff that you get when you're working out. And she just started being really transparent about the season of life that she was in as a mom, what body and physical health means to her when it comes to her emotional health and her roles that she plays as wife and mom and personal trainer and all these other things. And I was sitting there and realized, wow, I have so much to share on this topic. And it was her actual response of saying, I need to know what it is that's inside of your head and what's inside of your heart. And I was like, I never realized that I had done so much work. I never realized that what I was doing personally was also something that so many other people needed access to. And I already at the time had a podcast, and I was doing interviews with people and just like kind of extrapolating what other people were doing on there. Because this is a book specifically that she's referencing. This one is called Always Becoming: Sex, Shame, and Love. And it's about your mind, body, and spirit alignment and walking out life fully and healthy and holy. And so I was extrapolating other people's stories in that process and sharing bits and pieces of mine. But I realized in that one conversation, that's when the download came to say, I have a lot to say. And we, in that 1 hour, had every chapter written, basically. It was already done. And so now it was just a matter of, like you said, outlining it and saying, okay, what is worthwhile to share, and what are pieces that are kind of safe for me, and what maybe wouldn't meet an audience at large. So you do have to analyze who's the reader, and what is the outcome for the reader, and why are they going to want to listen to you or read you versus somebody else. And a lot of people will stop right there. They'll say, I'm not worth it. There's tons of other people who've talked about mind, body, soul, right? You could find thousands of books on it right now. But what's different about you is the denomination. It's the denominating factor. It's the reason. It's the period. It's the point. It's the why you have to write it, because we need your lens. Nobody else has walked that lens. And so it doesn't matter if you could put all these books on one shelf. My book is going to jump out to someone, and it's going to transform someone because of those same words in the same linguistic pattern that I did. They don't have my voice. They can't possibly. So you can't copycat anyone either. So I think that's also a whole other conversation about AI and plagiarism and all that we could get into. But truly, no one is like you. You're uniquely and wonderfully made.
Exactly. And I'm so glad that you acted upon that divine signal when you got it from your fitness trainer. Because when your eyes light up and you want to help somebody, and you know there is so much inside of you that can potentially be of use to others, I think that's the biggest signal that God, or whatever people want to call it, to give you to take that action of documenting in the form of a book or putting
Yeah.
together a course or starting a
Yeah.
podcast or whatever. I think
Yeah,
it's
and they all are the same, really.
Yeah.
So to know that like your time invested to build that is going to build a legacy business, essentially. Like your book is a business. And that's a huge thing that we share as a publishing house. It's not just a book and now I'm on my happy way onto the next book. It's like actually that becomes a part of the ecosystem of your life. And so I meet people who like, that's not the first book that I want to give people. That's not the book that I'm like, oh, I need to share my testimony with this person. No, I'm like, here's a strategy that you need. Here's this book that I want you, my Joyful Entrepreneur series. Read this one. But then eventually they get curious because they're connected to you as a person. Then they're like, I want to know more about you. I'm like, here, read this one. You'll get to know the whole backstory, right? But the one thing you said right there that I want to encourage people in, because I go to a lot of like writers and speakers conferences, and I've had the joy of working with dozens of authors now at this point. Some of them have waited decades to share the story that they knew they were supposed to share decades ago. And it all comes down to action. It all comes down to messy action. It's not perfect. It's not curated. It's like you have a download of this needs to be shared, and you holding it back is actually an act of disobedience to not only yourself, and you're going to hold that, you're going to carry that as a weight. You're going to carry that as a regret. You know, they say on the deathbed that the people don't talk about all of these amazing things. They talk about what they regret doing.
Yeah.
And I believe that all of us have a message inside of us, that everyone is an author, that everyone is a speaker, because we all have words that we've lived out. And so this is just a way of cementing them. And so don't be that person that has waited decades, that has carried that for so long, because not only is it an act of disobedience, but you're also blocking someone else's blessing. You are meant to walk this journey out to share with other people. If we were in an isolation unit and we couldn't talk to anyone, that'd be a whole nother conversation. But we're put into communities. We're put into networks. We're put into neighborhoods. We're put into cities. We're put into countries on purpose. And so if we look to it like, wow, this is going to become a resource. And this is a resource that might be for one person. We know the average author sells 2,000 copies of their book in the lifespan of their book. That one book, okay? So you might have 20,000 followers on social media, but likely you're not going to sell more than 2,000 copies. And so does that stop you? Does that hinder you? Or does that make you realize that the person who just swipes and scrolls past you every once in a while, remember that's only a 1% to 3% like even show up rate that they even see you. So they're not seeing your message on social media. But when you get someone's book in your hand and even if they don't read it for a while, it's on a coffee table and they're passing by your name, they're passing by your brand, they're passing by those colors, they're passing by the title. It could be a pen name. It's not even about that. It's about the message connected to it. Eventually they're going to skim through it. Eventually they're going to read it front to back. And that is going to be the transformative power of the words that you've left for someone. And you're no longer blocking a blessing. You're creating a transformation that will bless them. It could be fiction. It could be nonfiction. It could be a children's book. Doesn't matter the genre. There's a blessing inside of what we pass to other people.
Wow. I never knew there is such a deep spiritual reason why we should be sharing our message. Thank you for sharing that, Tamra. You also did not stop with one book. There are some authors, for them, just writing a book is one item on their bucket list. They do it and then they're happy. They don't do anything else. They don't even go ahead and market the book. They just want to do it for themselves, which is fine.
It's true.
Yeah, but then you put out this multi-author book called The Joyful Entrepreneur, and now it's become a series. So how was that experience versus writing your solo book? And why did you do it in the first place?
Oh, well, really for this exact reason that we're talking about is because I know the hold up points. I know the stagnation points. I know the comfort zones that people like to stay in. And I'm an action taker. And so if I get to be out front to say, hey, take action on this dream, take action on sharing this story, and I can create that platform for people and I can continue the momentum of that message for them when they're just, not interested in that story anymore, but it's their story. I feel like I am a nurturer of other people's stories, and I am a caretaker in that regard. And so if my name is on the front, I really value every name that's connected to that co-authored experience. One, because my name is connected to it, and two, because it's their story. It's a treasure. It's a marking point. It's a blessing, as I shared. And so I don't want to stop writing. I imagine one day I'm going to have bookshelves behind me like the ones you can see that are so much bigger than this. I've got bookshelves all around my house. I mean, there's literally, no joke, stacks of books. They just stare at me all day long. I just love books. I just love them. And I want other people to be able to share. I want other people to be able to share their stories. And so that's why I choose to do compilation books on top of my individual ones. I'm in the process of writing my next solo piece, and it's a labor of love, right? Because it has so much more personal space to it.
Yeah.
These can also be more timely. I feel like I can put them together and bring them to market a lot faster. I have another one coming out called the More Than Enough, and it's about the worthiness of a woman and the different titles that have like trapped us and kept us bound in our identity when we're actually free to be so much more than that. And I was able to bring that to life in like a less than a year time frame. And so traditional publishing houses, while we consider ourselves one because we pay our authors and all those other pieces that people love, they take up to 3 years sometimes.
Yeah.
And like I said, when you're ready to share, you're like, I want to do this now. 3 years feels like eternity, even though it's not. It's so fast in hindsight. But people, when they write their message, when they share that thing, they need that almost that sense of satisfaction, that like you check that box, like you said, for some people. I want to provide that to people. So the faster I can, the better. However, if you only are sharing in a singular compilation, which is what these people are mostly doing, that one chapter is a whole book. They actually have a whole book inside of them and they know it, but they have yet to experience the confidence of sharing their testimony, of sharing that story, of sharing that wisdom connected to their business development, their scaling methodologies. Nobody's given them affirmation on it. And I think that's one of the reasons I keep writing, is because of the testimonies on the other side that people give you when you read and when they've read and when they have this transformation. They're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that you walked through this. It gives me so much encouragement to walk through this situation that I'm walking through. I had no idea that you struggled with this in your business. It gives me so much encouragement because from the outside looking in, it's amazing, right? So I love the authenticity behind words that linger. And I hope that people who are listening think about the fact that like there are more words inside of you. And so while you said, Joyce, like how'd you choose that one topic? You have so many topics. You're right. I have so many topics and there's new topics that come about all the time. So I just keep a running list in another Excel spreadsheet of all the other topics that I want to write about. And seasonally, those topics will come up and they'll be the right topic at that right time. And the coolest part about it is this book has really been recycled. And what I mean by that is I initially self-published it with you all, and then a publisher approached me and was like, hey, I want to publish this book. And I'm like, can you even do that? It's been out for 2 years. They brought fresh wind to it. And at the time I'm like, wait, I want to publish my own book. Like I can do this. So then that's when my publishing house launched in cahoots with this other publishing house. And ultimately it's knowing that like your message will evolve with you, because sometimes you're writing before the world has taken traction to your message. And if your eyes are peeled, like there's this other author right now who just, Jamie Lee Kurma, she just brought out a book called Worthy. And it's been on 3 weeks in a row, a New York Times bestseller. And I'm thinking in the back of my head, like, man, I could look at it 2 ways. She beat my topic to the punch. But are there dozens, thousands of other books on worthiness that have been written in the decades prior? Yeah. What she's telling me is that the market is ready. The market is saturated with people that are ready for this message. So if you think the book's already been written, or you think, oh my gosh, this is a hot topic that she already did really well, again, that's actually market research for you to say, it's time to write your book. If everyone's talking about marriage problems, it's time to write your marriage story. If everybody's talking about business scaling, it's time for you to write your business scaling book. Right? So that's where I'm looking to. And you have an option every single day. I can look at it as a negative and I can write myself off, or I can put myself into the party and I can insert myself into the conversation.
Yeah. It's just the way we look at it.
Yeah. Every time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And whatever you just told about the compilation or the collaboration book, as we call it, is so useful for first-time authors because
Yeah.
some of them may not have the courage to write an entire book, but they don't mind sharing a slice of their life as a chapter in your book.
Yeah.
And that just not just gives them the gives them the confidence to write, because when you write one chapter, you know that you can write 10 more chapters and
Yes.
later put together a solo book. But it also gives them the affirmation when people read their book and says that, wow, I truly got inspired by your story. It gives them
Yeah.
the confidence that people are listening to their message, and it's such a great thing to do.
Yeah,
So
and you're sharing communities at that point too, because a lot of people who are authors, we talked about that 2,000 book amount in the life cycle. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I don't have 2,000 friends. I don't have 2,000 followers. I don't have an audience, so I can't write a book because I don't have anyone to sell it to."
mm,
Well, when you do these, you actually are getting access to everyone else's communities for you to start growing and flourishing and developing a name and developing a platform and
mm,
developing a in addition to the fact when the person like ourselves, I am around the country all the time. I'm doing different events, somewhere different in another city, at least once a month, if not 2 to 3 times a month. And we invite all of our authors to come to those events so that they are showcased, right? And I am essentially footing the bill. They bring their flight, they bring, they get there. But once they're there, they're already prepared with a platform and a host and someone who's going to give the limelight to them, because it's so much more fun to write a book and to celebrate that book with more people, which is why communities like yours are so important, because we can celebrate one another. We can buy each other's books. We can be a part of that 2000. And so when you've gone with someone who's not just like a standalone editor, not just someone who's going to post it on Amazon, but you do it with someone like you who has all these decades of authors, right? Who have been a part of the process, who are like, I remember when I wrote my first book. I remember what those nerves felt like. You feel like you just birthed a baby the day that it comes out, y'all. Sorry to the guys who are listening. To the women, it is true. You are like, oh my gosh, I'm putting this like thing that's been inside of me now out into the public that they can judge, they can read, they can like analyze, they can tell you your baby's ugly, like they can. But when you're the mama or the papa of that book, you're like, no, I am so proud. This is the prettiest baby I've ever seen, right? Even though their eyes are bulging out and their ears are really big, it's like, it doesn't matter. It's your baby. It's your book baby. So be proud of it and be encouraged that other people have gone before you and they felt all those same nerves. And it's going to be such a huge part of your legacy.
so true. I remember when you published your first book, Tamra, you were at these conferences, you were having a stall where people were picking copies of your book. So tell me about your connection with these conferences, and you have your own events now.
Yeah.
So how important it is for authors to be speakers at conferences, to be attendees, and to promote their books?
Yeah, your book is actually like an access pass to become a speaker. And so when I have a podcast called The Messenger Movement, and I alluded to the fact that your book is a business, it's like your business ecosystem that you're building. Essentially, think of your book as the business card, not in the sense, because no one wants a sex, shame, and love book as their business card. Just by the way, that was a terrible business move, but it was also the best business move ever because people saw me transparently and they didn't judge me, and it was so beautiful. So anyway, sharing that, think of it as an access pass to say, hey, you have a conference around motherhood. I have this motherhood book that I wrote. And they're like, oh, you're an author? You spent the time to actually publish, you spent the money to actually publish, you spent the intentionality to actually put in energy to do this thing. You, as an author, have done significantly more than the person who has just had a baby. I know that sounds weird, but it's true. You've not only had the babies, you've stewarded the babies, you've grown the babies, but you've written the book about it. So you've gone the extra mile, and people really want people who take themselves seriously. They want someone who is not just flippantly, today I talk about motherhood, tomorrow I talk about cheeseburgers. Like, that's not what they want. They want the person who has literally hung their hat on this topic. And so that's something that I'm really passionate about. You have to get in person to these events for that book to have virality. Because as I mentioned, you might not have a lot of social media followers, but when you go to somebody else's conference that one person there, the conference host basically, at that point, you're now getting in front of 50 people, 100 people, 5,000 people who now get to have access to your book. Virality spreads by word of mouth. And so you have to get where the mouths are, and the mouths are in person. They're communing together. They're having events together. They're having conversation and communication around the topic that you've already put the work into. So you've got to show up. And I think a lot of people think that maybe there's not events around that topic. I have a huge book that proves otherwise. It's all the associations that have been developed across the United States. And there are tens of thousands of organizations having conversations about the very topic that the person who's listening to this podcast will talk about. Bizarre things that you would never imagine. And so don't think that it's not being talked about. Just go search where it is being talked about.
Mm-hmm. So a good resource would be an online search on that particular topic if there's a conference happening, or do you have like a good
100%.
website?
It's a book that I literally am not joking. It's really big. This is
Wow.
all of the
Like a
associations.
directory.
This book was $400, okay? But it no longer is in print. It went out of print in 2019. But it's called the National Trade and Professional Associations of the United States. I'll say that again, National Trade and Professional Associations of the United States. And you can go to their website and it will tell you every single association associated to your particular topic. Nonprofits, for-profits, some of them, if you get the membership, they'll tell you how much they pay to have a conference. So you'll know what your speaker fee could be. It's that's a whole nother conversation. But yes, your book is meant to make money, not because they just gave you $15 or $25, but because they just paid you $5,000 to come to their event to speak.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the long-term game as well of I'm going to cement this message, and it's going to be an access pass for me to have these conversations with these types of people forevermore, right? So how is your book being positioned? That's a whole nother conversation about who do you want to talk to? Not just what do you want to say? It's like, who do you want to be in communication with? Because I could write a book, and maybe I will one day, about motherhood. But right now, like my emphasis while I talk to mothers is more to entrepreneurs, and is more to women at large. It's more to marriages than it is to motherhood. So we can infiltrate ourselves into any topic, but is it the people you want to talk to forever?
Right. So though you have a book on a particular topic, you can actually position yourself differently depending on the topic of the conference, right? You just need to tweak it.
Totally. Yes, 100%. Because it might be one chapter that makes itself known and is the keynote then to what it is that you're going to share. It doesn't have to be, it could be one topic. I talk about a lot of mental health in my book. But if you were to read the front of the book, you wouldn't be like, oh, she's talking about mental health. But it is in there. And so that's your knowledge and expertise as the author to say, okay, here are all the subtopics. Remember, I told you that cool chart that I have. Here are all the subtopics that I talked about. Now I can go and pitch this conversation to all these podcasts, to all these conferences, to all these mastermind events, to all these corporations. And that's how you can get access.
Amazing. So I now see, Tamra, that you have your own events as well. So how did you decide to put together your events, and what does it take to actually host your own event?
Oh my heavens. That's way harder than writing a book, just so you guys know. It might not look like it. It might look more fun on the other side of it, but it's way more expensive. And it's way more of an investment of energy and resources. However, the reason I do it is because I love people to come together. I love to host a space. I love to bring dreams to life. And I feel like that's only done when you're in person, at least done really, really well. And so I was willing to make the investment, whether it's hosting a small retreat or whether it's hosting a local event at a coffee shop, or it's the conferences that we host with hundreds of people that are at a big venue with all the lights, cameras, and action, right? It doesn't matter what size event you host. I highly recommend, if you want your message to have traction, host events. And that will be so much more transformative than just if they're reading your book and they've never got a chance to hug you. People will literally see me. They'll fly from other states to come see me just to give me a hug because of the impact that I've had in their life. And I don't know who they are. So it's so special. It's so dynamic. It's so much more than we give it credit for if we write it off and put it in our pocket or in the back of our mind or our briefcase or a trunk for the next couple decades. Like literally think about the longevity of your message if you started today.
Wow. I think that's one thing, that human touch is what we all missed during the pandemic. And now that we are back in action, at least till the time we host our own events, we should start
Yes.
attending other people's and just
Yes.
connecting with like-minded people.
100%. And you will be amazed just to go to support someone's event. I don't always get to speak at every event that I go to. Sometimes I'm like, man, there are the people in the audience that I want to speak to. I want to hang out with those people. I want to have that conversation, and I want to support other speakers. And so
Mhm.
I'll go to those events, and I can pretty much guarantee that within the next 2 years, I'll be speaking on that stage. And it's not me like going to find the host to say, hi, I'm a speaker. It's not that. It's showing up in the authenticity to serve other people and to celebrate other people in the season that they're in on their main stage moment. And you'll be seen in that. And so to be gracious to other people, pay the full price, pay the full ticket, and get in the room and see how you are seen simply from showing up to serve.
Yeah, I think that mindset of service will take us a long way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
completely. That's what our books do. That's what our words do. They serve other people. Now, you could be serving them life or you could be serving them death. So it's the power of our tongue, it's the power of our written word that can encourage or it can kill. And so it is a mindfulness of, are these words breathing life, or are they just a part of the media that's causing division, or the media that's causing slander or hurt to other people or people groups? I'm very mindful of making sure that my words are speaking life to everyone, no matter who gets their hands on it.
Mm. Talking about media, tell us more about Fit Media.
Yeah. So
What
Fit and
does,
Faith,
yeah.
yeah, Fit and Faith is a media company. I mentioned it as a publishing house, and it is. There is a publishing sector, but the media side is in order to have a message, you have to understand all elements of media: written, spoken, and visual. And so the visual pieces of your message really matter to everyone in which you're going to have an expression within. So whether it's your social media, we don't do media, social media management. That's not our agency plan. But we want people to have a footprint in those spaces. It's also the business element of knowing that an email capture, if you can get an email from your book, which there are methodologies of doing that. You write a book, you put a QR code, you serve them out something, it comes back to you as an email lead. You now have that person captured in a good way. Their attention is captured so much more powerfully and profoundly than a social media space.
Right.
So Fit and Faith is here to take messages and turn them into movements. We're here to allow somebody to say, oh, I have an idea, and actually birth the idea. And so we partner with people who would consider themselves messengers. And if they don't yet consider themselves messengers, they will by the time they're done working with us, because we're all meant to speak, share, write, and teach, and do all the things that everybody wants to do, but to do it in their unique way.
Wow. I love how you create an entire ecosystem for authors. We tell our first-time authors all the time that, yeah, you're writing a book, which is great, but that's just one piece in the whole puzzle. If you want to
Yeah.
serve people in a bigger way, you need to have your presence on stage. You need to have your own podcast. You need to put out your email
Yep.
newsletter regularly. But I'm so glad that your company is actually helping people have that platform to voice their message. And I think the
Yeah.
classic example would be you, Tamra, because you're walking the talk and your website is so impressive. So the next time an author asks me to show them an example of an author website, I'm going to show them yours, because it's your personal brand that is so authentic, and it talks about everything that you do, but in such a nice, fun way. I think you've done a fantastic job in putting together your website.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm so passionate about the visual side, because
Yeah.
not everybody's going to get to engage with me in ways like this. So to allow somebody to see your personality, even through your book cover, even through your words, it really matters.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what would be your one final word of advice for all those aspiring authors out there who know that they should be writing a book, which is why they're listening to us or watching us, but they've not taken that next step?
I would say the sky is the limit. And what I mean by that is like, don't think of it as so grandiose. Take the little steps that it takes you to get outside to experience the grandiose. And that's one action item at a time. It's one step at a time. So don't let the process overwhelm you or be too cumbersome when there are resources like Happy Self Publishing, when there are resources like Fit and Faith Press who can help you do it and don't do it alone. If I stayed in the space of doing it alone, I wouldn't be here. Your company was such an agent to support me at that time. And so I want people to know that there are resources out there to get you to the great outdoors, to the big open space of saying, man, I can now go anywhere in the world with this message and I can meet people and serve people with it. I've gone to the Dominican Republic. I've gone to the Bahamas. I'm going later this year. I'm going to serve people in other countries with a book that's written in my native language, not their native language, right? So there's access points, and it's truly the sky is the limit. Wherever you've always dreamed to go, you can go, but you've got to start with writing the book from the inside your heart.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Tamra. So where can people go find out more about you? Where do you want them to check out your work?
Yeah, I have alwaysbecomingbook.com if you want to go straight to the book that Joyton was referencing earlier. But if you just go to Tamra Andress, my name is super simple. It's T-A-M, like Tam R-A, no extra A, just tamraandress.com. I'm on Instagram fully and pretty much every social media outlet that you can think of. I also have more resources and teachings and trainings like this on YouTube. And I have an app as well. And inside of the app, I actually go through like the writing process. We're actually developing courses for that as well. So I'd love to just engage people, whether you want to travel the world and go on a writing retreat, whether you just want to hang out on social media, whether you need prayer to just get yourself moving, your fingers moving on a keyboard, or even just a connection point. If you want connection to some of the things that we've talked about, I am not always the right answer for everyone, but I can point you in the right direction.
Awesome. We are going to have all the links in the show notes. And thank you so much once again, Tamra, for coming on Author Success Show.
Always my joy. Thanks, Georgina.